Man, let me ask you a question. You remember the children's show Timothy Goes to School? The show centers around a child raccoon named Timothy and his adventures in school. Despite the show only lasting a total of 26 episodes and having a mixed critical reception, it has developed a cult following over the years following its cancellation. Seriously, there's a cult in my neighborhood specifically dedicated to Timothy Goes to School. It's regularly repeated on channels such as Tiny Pop, and if you don't know what that channel is, well, count yourself lucky, my little duckling. Now, the funny thing is, well, it's not really funny, but I actually used to work at Tiny Pop as a scriptwriter back from 2000 to 2002. Yeah, I'm old, shut up. Timothy Goes to School ended in October of 2001, but what a lot of people don't know is that the show was actually intended to be given a proper send-off. The official series finale would have explored the character of Henry the bus driver. Henry is a fat fucking beaver who drives the kids to Hilltop School every day. It was scheduled to air in very early January 2002. Sadly, the head of Tiny Pop, Eddie Pop, scrapped the episode as he hated it. "It's bloody horrible," Eddie cried whilst leaving the viewing room. Poor old Eddie. Actually, no, because Eddie is a horrible boss. One time at a Christmas staff party, Eddie spiked the punch bowl with whiskey. I was dancing on the roof until the sun went down in Hushabye Mountain. Okay, moving on from my hatred towards Eddie Pop, I was doing some script writing, as script writers tend to do. Went over to the photocopier and was tempted to photocopy my arse cheeks, but I saw a small DVD disc sitting on top of the copier. Picked the disc up and looked it over. The disc was a blank disc with writing on it which read, "Timothy Goes to School Series Finale." It was written in tomato sauce, or at least I certainly hoped it was tomato sauce. Maybe it was your girlfriend's time of the month. Moving on. It smelt more like Nolan North's laundry basket, if you ask me. I was very interested in seeing the series finale of Timothy Goes to School, so I decided in my utmost wisdom that I would watch it. What a fucking dumb mistake that was, let me tell you. I walked over to the laptop which I'd been writing on and popped the disc into it. The disc made the laptop make horrifying sounds. It sounded like someone throwing chicken into a wood chipper, and I don't mean a rubber chicken. Ever done that? I know I have. Waste of perfectly good meat. Sorry about that. Now, the DVD showed some commercials. I found this odd as this was the DVD only intended to be seen by employees of Tiny Pop and not the general public. Plus, we don't have all those adverts that you Americans have on your channels. The commercials were, well, weird. One commercial had the Vegetable Man dancing like a madman. He then stopped and stared at the screen for an uncomfortable amount of time before saying, "Hello everybody, I'm the Vegetable Man, and for a small loan of $1 million I can sing, take on me, take on me, take me." I guess if I paid him the money, he'd be able to sing it without croaking. Suddenly, the screen cut to another commercial which had Ned Flanders from The Simpsons running people over with his car. It's quite funny, actually. Actually, no, it wasn't. It made me sick and I vomited into my shoes. Whatever happened to his plus-batarian values? By the far, the strangest commercial was when they showed Mr. Park squeezing an apple and then another and then another. He was squeezing an entire box full. What a waste of apples. About 21 commercials later, the episode actually started with the theme song. It wasn't correct. For starters, Timothy's house looked like it had been hit by a train. Timothy's mum and pup were replaced by Colonel Dodo, and Henry couldn't drive the bus properly. He was driving like he was drunk or something. He was crashing into fences, mailboxes. He even crashed into Timothy's living room. Timothy didn't seem to notice as the doors to the bus opened. Henry didn't look very happy to see Timothy and gave him the middle finger. can only blame Henry, to be honest with you. Anyway, the rest of the theme song played like normal, with Henry driving the kids to school. However, the person singing the lyrics from that point on sounded incredibly nervous. He was constantly stuttering and repeating himself. There's so much to do at school, the singer would sing. Yeah, imagine that, but for the entire frickin' song. Also, the theme song ended with Henry crashing the bus into Hilltop School. The episode then started with the title of the episode appearing on the screen. It read, Henry Goes Crazy. The episode started with Henry walking up after his alarm clock went off. He walked into his kitchen and made himself a steaming cup of joe. I'm losing the plot here, Henry muttered as he took a sip from his coffee. Henry's wife, or at least someone I assumed to be his wife, came down to give Henry a hug. It was Rila Roo from Crash Bandicoot. He jumped in the air after hugging Henry. He jumped so much that he ended up crashing through the floor down towards the basement. Oh, God. The episode then cut to show Timothy getting ready for school. He looked out his living room window and saw the bus was pulling on the pavement. Once again, Timothy's parents were replaced by Colonel Dodo. Be a good little sport, dear Timothy, Colonel Dodo said before continuing with, I need you on peak behavior for the big hunt this afternoon. Timothy hugged Dodo before getting thrown out of the window. That was horrifying. Timothy then climbed onto the bus, but Henry didn't seem to acknowledge him. Henry then drove the bus down to Lily's house. This is where things got weird, as if they weren't weird before. Lily ran up to the bus as the doors opened to reveal Henry's smiling face. Hi, Lily, you got all your pencils. Pencils. I don't like that for a good 2 minutes and a half. Lily just looked dumbfounded and asked, No, should I get on the bus now, or? Pencils, and scarf. Henry finished as Lily awkwardly made her way onto the bus. Time to go to Hushabye Mountain, Henry sang to himself as he began driving toward Claude's house. Arriving at Claude's house, Claude was shown leaving the house with Grace by his side as they both had a hangover. Henry ended up running them over with his bus, killing them both instantly. Oh, what the heck is going on? Lily cried. Lily, Timothy, Yoko, Doris, and the others then tried their best to get off the bus. Henry was having none of it and slammed his foot on the accelerator, causing them to fall down onto the floor. The Franks did notice, however, as they're fucking stupid. They were busy eating beans on toast. Henry continued driving the bus until they finally reached Hilltop School. He ended up driving and crashing the bus onto the playground. The children all ran off the bus and ran inside as Henry climbed out from the wreckage. Arriving at the classroom, Mrs. Jenkins announced that the class was going on a field trip to a street corner where a man sells pirated DVDs. I wouldn't recommend buying them pirated DVDs. Buy regular DVDs so you can laugh like a seal, even though the people in your movie are talking about whales dying out. Sorry about that. So the episode then cut to show the children reluctantly leaving the classroom. They tried explaining the morning's events to Mrs. Jenkins, but she was having none of it. Quick sticks, children, Mrs. Jenkins cried as the children all gathered outside the school to wait for the bus. The bus eventually pulled up and was completely fixed. Henry had been supplied with a new bus by the depot. The doors of the bus opened to show Henry downing a bottle of wine. He looked at the gang and said, I love me smelly wine. Miss Jenkins didn't seem to care that Henry was drinking on the job as she made her way onto the bus with the children following behind her. Lily was stopped from getting on the bus as Henry asked, "Got all your pencils, 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 pencils?" "Oh, not this again!" Timothy cried as Lily ran onto the bus before Henry could go on any longer. Henry began driving the bus at an immense speed. The bus was swaying violently from left to right as Henry struggled to keep the damn thing on the road. Mrs. Jenkins didn't seem to notice as she was busy reading a newspaper about ducks walking into parking lots with guns, asking for bread. "Got any grapes?" That's when Timothy and Yoko decided they'd had enough. "We've got to do something, Timothy!" Yoko cried as Timothy responded with, "Yeah, but what can we do, Yoko? Henry's gone bananas." That's when Charles, of all people, got an idea. "How about we press the stop button? We could pretend that one of us is going to be sick." Charles exclaimed that at the top of his lungs, though. "That might just work," Timothy said as he stood up and pressed the stop button. The bus came to an abrupt halt as Henry got up from his seat and walked over to Timothy and Yoko. "Who pressed that stop button?" Henry asked, but it didn't sound like Henry. No, it sounded more harsh and crisp, like a packet of cheese and onion crisps. "It was me, Henry," Charles said while holding his tummy. He then continued with, "I need to get off the bus 'cause I'm gonna puke." "I got a better idea," Henry said as he slammed his foot on Charles, crushing him to death in the process. "What the fuck did you do that for, Henry?" Nora cried as Henry yelled, "No sweating on me, bus child!" He then grabbed Nora and proceeded to throw her out the window. The episode then cut to a brief clip of Michael Caine crying before asking, "What have I done?" He was sitting on a sofa with Prince Charming, who said, "It was charming to be with you." Then it cut to show the Vegetable Man again, who was out of his vegetable costume for once. He also looked proper miserable, like some kind of Mr. Parks. "Brother, have you seen my vegetables? I think I left them in Brandon's house. I hate Brandon, he's bloody smelly," the Vegetable Man asked, before then laughing a sinister laugh as the episode came back to normal. The episode then came back to show that Henry was still driving the bus like mad. He'd driven the bus onto a freeway. "We've got to take control of the bus," Fritz said as Timothy asked, "But how?" "Frank and beans," Frank 2 said, who was busy eating baked beans with Frank 1. Now those two deserve to be killed. Yoko, meanwhile, was busy looking out the window to see if someone could save them. She eventually saw an Indian man driving a truck who was riding alongside the bus. Yoko tapped her paw on the window and wrote the words "help" on it using permanent marker. "Oh, no, you don't!" The man cried as he began ramming his truck into Henry's bus. You see, the words were upside down to the Indian man, so the word help became Shelp. Shelp was the name of a goat who once plagued the man's stock back when he was selling lawnmowers to people back in India. This is why it had ignited such a violent reaction from the man. Henry responded to the ramming by giving the man's truck one fatal hit, which caused it to cruise right off the freeway into a ditch. "Good riddance," Henry muttered as he continued driving as if nothing even happened. He continued to drive down the freeway and opened his window in order to allow some salty sea air into the bus. Fritz then made a dive for the window, only to get whacked across the face by Henry. "You want to go outside for some fresh air, do you, punk?" Henry asked before throwing Fritz out of the window. "Anyone else?" Henry asked, as everyone began crying over the loss of their friends. Even Doris cried, which is very out of character for her. Did you know that Doris means death in Latin? Well, that's what I think, anyway. Upon getting off the freeway, Henry began speeding toward the bus depot. He crashed through the depot, killing all the bus drivers in the process, including Stan Butler, who was just about to head home. He was lucky in the end, though, as his mother and sister had cooked him a smelly fry-up. I mean, proper smelly. Greasy or nasty. Sorry if that put you off your lunch. To be honest, I don't really care if it did or not. Anyway, Inspector Cyril Blakey, the owner of the depot, climbed in through the window and said, "Henry, you're fired." "Fired?" Henry asked, as Blakey replied with, "Yes, Henry, fired. You've killed and endangered God knows how many lives today with your recklessness. Face it, Henry, you've lost it completely." Timothy and the rest of the gang were allowed off the bus while Henry and Mrs. Jenkins were taken downtown by the cops, who just so happened to be Sam and Max. Henry was sent to the local mental hospital, where the front guard Gordy keeps a bear as a pet, as we've already established. We've been reading the Bruno Tattaglia, Oliver Charles, funny as in scary pasta guide. It's quite a read, but like I say, it's 45 pence. So fucking nick it if I were you. Code 45. Meanwhile, Mrs. Jenkins was given life in prison for her careless nature when she very easily could have put a stop to Henry's zany antics and fired him sooner. During her interrogation, Mrs. Jenkins revealed that she'd been taking advantage of Henry's recent insanity to get rid of her students, as she long since grown tired of teaching the children. She wanted to teach at the high school, but those bastards at the school board said, "Fuck you, Mrs. J." She was assigned to only teach Timothy and his friends. So when she noticed Henry was losing the plot, she decided to use it to her advantage. That is one sadistic fox. Oh well, I guess they can't all be fantastic foxes. With Mrs. Jenkins gone, Timothy's class was given a new teacher, that being Mrs. Appleberry. Meanwhile, the children were also given a new bus driver who was really just Hagrid without a beard. "You're a wizard, Timothy," Hagrid would say every morning as the children made their way onto the bus. I think everyone rested a little easier now, knowing that Henry was no longer a threat to them. With that, the episode ended with no credits, instead cutting to a sick clip which had a man with a potato sack over his head. He was holding a chainsaw as he yelled, "Ugh!" and charged at the screen. I slammed the laptop lid down as I heard noises coming from across the room. Something was coming to get me. I grabbed my handgun, which had allowed me to have at work for some reason. I proceeded to throw it into my suitcase, and I began making my way downstairs. The writer's office was on the top floor of the building, so I tried using the elevator, only to find that it was out of order. I raced downstairs as fast as I could. I eventually reached the exit and darted through the parking lot toward a small forest area. I could hear grunting and running noises coming from behind me. I crawled through the forest and hid behind an oak tree. I could hear something crawling beside me. I turned around to see none other than Henry himself crawling toward me. I grabbed my handgun, shot him 5 times in the chest, but no effect. Henry opened his mouth. His buck teeth were sharp as knives as he roared a mighty roar. He then asked in a demonic voice, "Got all your pencils, 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 pencils?" "No!" I cried as I attempted to escape on foot. This ended up proving to be futile as I tripped on a twig. Henry leaped on top of me and proceeded to enjoy his next meal. After he was done, Henry rose up from my rotting corpse and said, "I could really use some cheese." As I lay here rotten on a forest floor, I have this to say. There's a reason why some lost episodes are lost. They create demons like Henry. That's why I remembered something. The day after the first viewing of the episode, Eddie Pop went missing. He hasn't been seen since. If only I'd known the true reason behind his disappearance. Well, maybe then I wouldn't have been so foolish.